Hey y'all, hope you're doing well today. So I'm really excited to bring the message to you. I was looking for inspiration and I happen to have these two books in my Jeep, and so we're going to be reading a little excerpt from each one and pulling the message together. It's one of those things that's really fun when you're just on the truth-seeking journey and you're just researching and you happen to find things that just literally happen. It's like the book just falls apart, in the perfect spot. It just opens up and just shows you something that you were already thinking about. And when you have, a belief in a higher power and a spiritual realm, it's kind of like it feels divinely orchestrated. You know what I mean? It's like that's your confirmation that, what God put on your heart, when you first woke up or whatever, is truly the message to move forward with. It's what needs to be spoken and shared. So I hope that you really enjoy the message today. So, it's, we talk a lot on my channel about, just evolving and learning and growing and changing. But there's aspects of us that, I feel like really I don't want to change. I can say that about myself, and I wonder if you can relate to that. And those are the parts that, somebody with bad intentions, if you get tangled with them for, a certain amount of time, that's the kind of part of you that can start to erode. And what can wind up happening, whether it's just your lightheartedness, or maybe you're just naturally kind of a jovial, happy-go-lucky, or a person that loves humor, whatever it is, that kind of stuff can certainly come under attack. Anything that brings you and others joy, that's just a part of how God created you, that's the kind of thing that unfortunately these people that walk in the darkness, they seem to just hone in on and attack, even if it's done in a covert manner. And so you can be left, when you're coming out of this situation, totally unsure, who you are anymore, and certainly not having confidence in certain aspects of your personality. And I just encourage you to shake off all of that negative energy. And I hope that the message today is going to just firm up that opening part of my message for you all and support it. But there's so many things that can be life-changing. And isn't it beautiful? And this is going to be highlighted in a story I'm going to share with you all today that just really touched my heart. But isn't it beautiful when there's just I think the word is happenstance, some random small something that happens, in just a random, unexpected way, in a moment in your life, that actually impacts you in such a way that it you never forget it, and it truly does change you forever. Those are the kind of things that are just beautiful. It's just kind of like you feel, it's kind of like when you're going about your day and you feel like certain things are just kind of happening out of your control, or maybe things aren't going as planned or whatever, but then you find the reason why they didn't go as planned, because this particular moment happened in your life. And I'll tell you all. So for me, the most recent has been finding crunchy peanut butter. It is life-changing. It's so good. If you're just wanting to make that shift away from desserts that are just heavily sugar laden, you might say, into something that's still kind of like a dessert but not really, what I've been doing is eating graham crackers with crunchy peanut butter, because it gives it more substance. It's like, it feels like an actual treat that way, and it's just so good. But it's really about the simple joys, and anyway, I'm sitting here holding my baby wipes. I keep these in the Jeep to clean my hands. And so they were just one frozen block this morning. So I hope wherever you are, you're staying warm. And I know if you're like me and you love the great outdoors, it's kind of hard. You get stir crazy just being stuck inside all the time. But I hope that you can find a way to get out and enjoy the sunshine and still stay warm. So I just hope you're doing well. I hope you're safe and warm and have everything that you need throughout this whole winter and always, right? So let's start by reading an excerpt from this book here. And we're going to be looking first at page 76. So in the middle of this page, it starts talking about, it says, today doctors are talking a great deal about psychosomatic ailments, right? In other words, how our mind can affect the state of our body, the health of our body. And so let's skip down a little bit further and start reading down here, about 3/4 of the way down. Whatever happens in the mental body happens in the physical body, and in turn, whatever happens in the physical body happens in the mental body. Every fluctuation on the level of the mind has a chemical reaction, and every chemical reaction in turn generates a fluctuation on the level of the mind. We're going to be looking at how everything works together today, right? Part of the grand divine design. So, the physical and mental bodies are like your hardware and software. Hardware and software cannot do anything unless you plug into quality power. So the third layer of the self is and I'm practicing my Sanskrit, so the pranamaya kosha, or the energy body, right? So we have the mind, the physical body, and the energy body, okay? It says, so if you keep your energy body in perfect balance, there will be no disease in your physical or mental bodies. Today, there is scientific evidence to show that the impact of genetic memory, this is super interesting to me, genetic memory on the human being is not absolute. Except the fundamental aspects of the DNA, everything can be changed, including the genetic trends of susceptibility to ailments. Infectious diseases happen because of external organisms, but chronic diseases are manufactured daily by human beings. When your energy body is in full vibrancy and proper balance, chronic diseases cannot exist in the body. This kind of reminds me of something I heard years ago. I may be off in making this correlation, but I think it was called terrain theory. In other words, there's always going to be like bacteria and viruses and random stuff out in this world, but if you're keeping your body healthy, it's kind of like, that's the difference in a person who is affected and gets sick versus someone who's not, Just, I think they call that terrain theory. It says, I could introduce you to thousands of people who have gotten rid of their physical and psychological ailments just by doing certain simple yogic practices. These practices are not aimed at the disease. They are just aimed at bringing a certain harmony and vitality to the energy body. So I just want to pause here and say, I'm certainly not attaching to the message specifically, with regards to certain parts of this, and condemning other viewpoints or perspectives about health or anything like that. I'm just presenting the information to you, and what we're going to be focusing on is just bringing ourselves into balance, right? And in the latter part of the message, you're going to see how there's a shift with regards to thinking about these things and being in balance to it being more of a mental and spiritual, right? But I certainly do believe that all of these things work together, and that's why I can really appreciate when I hear about different programs or treatment centers, or programs within a hospital where they actually bring in some type of mindfulness practice to help their patients incorporate that aspect too into their healing, their approach to healing, which is cool. But let's read a little bit more. So he goes on to talk about the 3 dimensions of the self, right? That, we're kind of all aware of: the physical, the mental, the energetic. They are essentially physical in nature, though each is more subtle than the preceding one. I thought this was really a cool analogy. He says, it's like a light bulb, electricity, and light. All are physical. One you can hold in your hand, the other you can feel, and the other takes a sensitive receptor, like the eye, to experience, but they are essentially physical, which is why you can experience them through your sense organs. However, there is a 4th layer called, and I'm totally not going to say this one right, probably, Sanskrit, Vijnana Mayakosha, or the etheric body. Ghana means knowledge, or Gnana, it's Gnana, means knowledge. And then we have Vishesh Gnana, means extraordinary knowledge. That which is beyond the sense perceptions. This is a transient state. It is neither physical nor non-physical. It is like a link between the two. This kind of starts reminding me of Joseph Campbell's, discussions about the underworld, and how we start out really kind of unaware of what and who we are. It's like we don't really know all of our parts and pieces intimately, and going down into the underworld is hard, very hard. But if it doesn't totally take you out, if you're strong enough to pull through, then that's the part that that brings you together, all those parts and pieces of you together in your conscious awareness. And then you become empowered, because now you know who you are. So I kind of like reading about this stuff. It is not in your current level of experience, because your experience is limited to the 5 sense organs, which cannot perceive the non-physical. Those who report near-death experiences are those who could have slipped accidentally into this state. Such an experience occurs when, for some reason, people's physical, mental, and energy bodies have become feeble. So like for me, I had an accident, and I had a really bad concussion. And this really was a pivotal point that shifted my perception of everything. It really put things in perspective when your vision's affected, and you're stuck in bed for a while healing, and you can't even drive, and it's crazy all the things I use for bookmarks. But this is the cave of the winds in Colorado. But yeah, it's a lot of times it takes something like that to wake us up. And sometimes I feel like these things are divinely orchestrated to get us out of the way we were living before, or a bad situation that was actually dangerous and we didn't really know it was dangerous, or we wouldn't allow ourselves to accept the danger we were in, or whatever it was. Sometimes God orchestrates random things that just catapult us into safety, or into a new level of consciousness. And so yeah, it says, if you learn to find conscious access to this dimension, there will be a quantum leap in your ability to know the cosmic phenomenon. So really interesting. And then he goes on to talk about bliss, and we're not going to get into that, but I just wanted to mention that's where it goes there. And then over on page 79, we're going to be reading from 79, 80, and 81. It's talking about bringing together all the aspects of ourselves, right, into our conscious awareness. And I mean, what does that do? What does that do for us, as we learn about ourselves, to know thyself? I personally think it means you can act more consciously, therefore you can hopefully stop accidentally projecting any kind of bad vibes out into the world. Hopefully you can as you become more and more conscious, you can become more and more considerate of other people, and also just not add to anyone else's trauma or your own. You can start making better decisions, right? It's the process of getting the understanding piece of wisdom. It's that process. It's the getting process that the Bible talks about, that the principal thing is wisdom, and with all your getting, get understanding. So the getting understanding part, I'm starting to perceive that from the lens of, or perspective of, that it's truly a lifelong process, the getting part. So so it talks about energies, right? And so on page 80, it says, every human being is a unique combination of the same ingredients. All these aspects, and these are like yoga terms, karma, Gnana, or Ghana, I think it's Gnana, bhakti, and kriya, have to function in an integrated way if one wants to get anywhere. If these 4 dimensions, which is really interesting because that seems to be a common theme in a lot of legends and folklore and fairy tale and symbolism too, the 4 winds, or whatever it's called, or the circle with the 4 directions. If you wanted to just go down that rabbit hole, it might be fun, if you have the time. But it says, if these four dimensions, body, mind, emotion, and energy, don't walk together, you will be one big mess. So next he presents a story, and I thought it was really cool. So we're going to read this. And it does talk about an idol. And I know that if you have, the Christian belief, what the view is on idols, but I think there's still value to be pulled from the story. And again, I just encourage you to look at everything from an expanded viewpoint and be strong enough and rooted strongly enough in your beliefs and your personal relationship and your walk with the divine that you can't be shaken or persuaded off your path. You know what I mean? But you can still learn from all kind of different cultures and belief systems. So I hope you enjoyed the story. I really did. Once it happened, 4 men were walking in the forest. The first was a jnana yogi, the second was a bhakti yogi, the third was a karma yogi, and the fourth was a kriya yogi. Usually these 4 people can never be together. So I looked up how to pronounce it's spelled G-N-A-N-A, and apparently it's the G is like a Y, so it's like Yanana, which is really pretty, right? So yes, it says the first was the Jnana yogi, the second was bhakti, the third was a karma yogi, and the fourth was kriya. And remember, keeping in mind, it helps me to just keep in mind the English version of the Sanskrit, which is body, mind, emotion, and energy, okay? So it says usually these 4 people can never be together. So again, we have these aspects of us personified, right? It says the Jnana yogi has total disdain for every other type of yoga. His is the yoga of the intellect, and typically an intellectual has complete disdain for everybody else, particularly these devotional types who look upward and chant God's name all the time. They look like a bunch of idiots to him. But a bhakti yogi, a devotee, thinks all this jnana, karma, and kriya yoga is a waste of time. He pities the others who don't see that all you need to do is know that God exists, hold his hand, and walk in trust. All this mind-splitting philosophy, this bone-bending yoga is absurd to him. Then there is the karma yogi, the man of action. He thinks all the other types are just plain lazy. Their lives are pure self-indulgence. But the kriya yogi is the most disdainful of all. He laughs at everyone. Don't they know that existence is just energy? If you don't transform your energy, whether you long for God or for anything else, nothing is going to happen. There can be no transformation. These 4 people customarily cannot get along, but today they happen to be walking together in the forest. Suddenly, a storm broke out. It grew fierce. The rain started pouring down relentlessly. Drenched to the skin, the 4 yogis started running, looking desperately for shelter. The bhakti yogi, the devotion man, said, "There's an ancient temple in this direction. Let's go there." As a devotee, he was particularly familiar with the geography of temples. They ran in that direction. They came to an ancient temple. All the walls had crumbled long ago. Just the roof and 4 columns remained. They rushed into the temple, not out of any love for God, but just to escape the rain. So let's kind of keep that sentence in mind and see if we can relate that to our experiences. Symbolically, right? Metaphorically. There was a deity in the center. They ran toward it. The rain started lashing from every direction. There was no other place to go, so they moved closer and closer. Finally, there was no alternative. They just sat down and embraced the idol. The moment these 4 people hugged the idol, suddenly God appeared. In all their minds, the same question arose. Why now? They wondered. We expounded so many subtle and arcane philosophies, worshipped at every possible sacred shrine, great and small, selflessly served so many people, did so much body-breaking penance, but you never showed up. Now, when we're just escaping the rain, you turn up. Why? God said, "At last, you 4 idiots got together." I thought that was a really cool story. So I'm going to read a little bit more. So it says yoga is quite simply the science of bringing the four idiots together. Right now, for most people, these four dimensions are aligned in different directions. It's like a fragmentation, right? And a lot of times when we hear terms like that through the lens of psychology, I think we think, well, that's not me. That's someone who's severely, impacted by a mental illness or whatever. But I look at these things as a spectrum, and I think that a lot of us, as we go through life and we are faced with the darkness in a personal way in our life, and our lives get shaken up, I think this kind of stuff affects us, on a spectrum in different ways. And so I definitely think there's value in looking at how we are affected, and to reflect back on our experiences, and to see our growth, and to see this journey, this hero's journey, as one that maybe all of us go on at some point, or almost all of us, or many of us. So it says your mind is thinking one way, your emotions pull you another way, your physical body another way, and your energy another way. This makes you a potential calamity, an accident waiting to happen. You are being hijacked. You are being pulled apart in four different ways. It is now time to plunge into the adventure of self-alignment. I like how he calls it an adventure. Into the remarkable empirical system that is yoga, one that enables you to be both alchemist and experiment, subject and object at the same time. And I'm going to skip just a little bit just to close this chapter out here. It says, there is so much talk of God and heaven, mainly because human beings have not realized the immensity of being human. It is obvious that the very source of life is throbbing within you some way. This reminds me of Jesus, talking to the disciples, and they're just like totally and I'm sure, if I had been living during that time, I would have been the same way. They were totally I think the word is enthralled with him and his presence and his, all the miracles he was performing and just all that he was. And he kept, if you notice, trying to get them to see that we are empowered. He says, all these things, that I do, you can do, and even greater things than that. And it's like we just dismiss that, and it's coming into the realization of, our power, who we really are. And it is part of, it's not like, I don't think we should view that as not being dedicated to God, or as being egotistical and thinking we don't need God. No, it's that God, blessed us with that, as his children, right? As heirs to this numinous divinity, that we get to be a part of that, right? As his children spiritually. So I don't see this as being in any way a conflict. And that's what's hard when you try to present this kind of information with people who are very rigid in their thinking in religion versus spirituality. I've had friends in my life that just immediately, they won't even listen to anything you have to say. They just look at a book, a cover, and they'll just immediately just slam it with, that's got to be anti-religious or whatever. And it's like, no, it's the deepening of that. And my experience has been that it shifts you into spirituality, out of religion, into the personal walk with the divine, right? So, yes, it says, it is obvious that the very source of life is throbbing within you in some way. The source of your life is also the source of every other life and the source of all creation. This dimension of intelligence or consciousness exists in every one of us. The deliverance of every human being lies in finding access to this deathless dimension. To be joyful and peaceful within yourself every moment of your life, to be able to perceive life beyond its physical limitations, these are not superhuman qualities. These are human possibilities. Yoga is not about being superhuman. It is about realizing that being human is super. I thought that was cool. So I hope you enjoyed that story. I think it was just exemplary of the hero's journey and of the path that many of us have found ourselves on after coming out of a toxic situation or relationship. And then I'm going to expand a little bit on that in this book, the Book of Symbols. It's just a really excellent resource. And we're going to be looking at the symbol of rain, because remember, it was the rain that brought the 4 people together in the story, right? So we're just going to look at a little bit here. If you have the book, it's on page 62. And so it says, as symbol and metaphor, the details of nature's rains reflect inner psychic dispositions. When we are flooded, we are emotionally overwhelmed. When it rains, we withdraw inward, move to an interior place, and seek shelter, like many of us are doing right now. We don't stay outside very long, and we're going right back inside. It was too cold, right? Yeah, but that's what happens. See, think about the Bible verse that says to be still and know God, you know, and then think about our modern culture and how busy we are. You know, how often do we sit still? You know, you may experience or have already experienced a time in your life when God just makes that happen, where you have to withdraw inward, see, and be still. And then what happens when you're still? You know God. You come to know. There's an awareness, a movement from darkness to light, from unconsciousness to consciousness, right? An awakening. So when it rains, we withdraw inward, move to an interior place, and seek shelter. The sky above, aloof. This is really symbolic, heavily, if you think about it. And spirited and superior. Think about the ego, right? Being certain. And look at the correlation coming up here between certainty and unconsciousness. You know, versus, you know, the wisdom that learning is really a process of unlearning. Just like the Bible says, you know, if any man thinks that he is wise, let him become a fool first, so that he may become wise. See, it's a process of humbling. The sky above, aloof and spirited and superior, darkens, storms, and finally lets go its waters, corresponding to grayness, disruption, moodiness, and tearful rains of sorrow, or perhaps to much needed release, and even the gentle joy of singing in the rain. Beneficial healing by the celestial influence of such rain cleanses that which is dark and trapped in emotional blindness, or in the parched earth within, inert, barren of life, stuck in unconsciousness or in uncertainty, and in need of the dissolving and propagating rains. The alchemists saw the falling rain as the washing of this nigredo, Nigredo state, okay? Illuminating and reanimating what felt dead and dark. This divine intervention of grace occurring at the darkest point, preceding a new conjunctio, I guess, CONIUNCTO. In other words, this divine intervention of grace occurring at the darkest point preceded a new psychic union. That's what it meant, right? A new psychic union of emotion, body, imagination, and mind in a new level of consciousness. So we see now the importance of the symbolism of rain in that story that I shared with you all, right? That's what happens, right? So there has to be a storm. There has to be this process of humbling. This is describing the process of ego death, the process of, you know, taking oneself from comfort that's really, you know, it's really kind of like an illusion. It's like deception that, you know, to be made comfortable. Because a lot of times when you are a resource for someone who is exploiting you in some way ongoing, or worse, and or may have plans for your destruction, for them to, get a payoff or whatever it is. A lot of times you're made comfortable. That, these people don't want you to ever wake up. They want to keep you comfortable to a degree, see? But it's like they only usually give you breadcrumbs to keep you comfortable, because that's all they can muster up, It's like hard for them to do that. But that's why a lot of times when you come out of these bad situations, you wake up and you get to a place of peace and safety. At that point is when you can say, why did I stay? Why did I only accept, these breadcrumbs or whatever? And then you can start to look back further in your life, on past events or your childhood or whatever. But essentially, going through this storm and having everything shaken up, that's what happens. It's like a fragmentation process, so that every part can be put back together, but done so in a conscious manner, right? So now you are awakened in that way. And I truly believe that these people who have been exploiting you, they had to have some other level of awareness that you didn't have at the time, right? And so when you come into this awareness, they see that in you. And I think that you become a threat. So I think that even can be a sign, that people you didn't realize had bad intentions for you, if they start, treating you like you're a threat and you're like, where's this coming from? That can just be confirmation for you that you're waking up, so just take heart. The Bible says in this world we will have troubles, and so there's always going to be the darkness at work in other people. And so let's finish this excerpt I want to share with you all. So there's this new level of consciousness, right? In mythic lore, humanity, out of balance with the divine nature of life, symbolically invites flood or drought. Peoples the world over have created rain dances and rituals to invoke beneficent treatment by the sky god, or sometimes the rain mother, who dispenses rain. Nearly all the world's mythologies include references to a divine flood, wherein the sky deities wipe out worlds before recreation or repopulation in a new age. Thus does Yahweh proclaim, I will cause it to rain upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights, and every living substance that I have made will I destroy from off the face of the earth. And this is from Genesis chapter 7, verse 4. When the waters are flooding, the people must seek higher ground, a new perspective that holds one above the inundation is necessary. Yes, that's the expanded mindset. It's rising above, it's elevating, an elevated viewpoint to understand that you can see all parts. It's kind of like you can't see the forest for the trees, but when you get up above that, then you see the forest. And now you have perspective. Now you have context. And it takes that for understanding to happen. So I hope this has been a beneficial message for you. I hope you found value in it. I hope it got the wheels turning for you. I hope that you liked it as much as I did. It was exciting for me, just personally, when I was able to find all that and put it together. And so I thank you so much for coming along to hear the message today. I hope that you have a beautiful day, and I'll see you again very soon.